Welcome back here tuned into Bazaar Morning Call. You're on CNBC TV 18. As we were telling you earlier, the gift nifty suggesting that we're likely to see further green. A 40-point uptick is what we're working with, so we get closer to around the 20,000 odd mark. But plenty of stocks to discuss. Prakash Diwan joins us to help us out with just that. Hi Prakash, good morning. Thanks so much for joining in. Prakash, I wanted to ask you about Shyam Metallics. There's an OFS that they've announced, and I think the street was anticipating that. You have been tracking, a couple of these stocks closely, I think Godavari Power and Ispat and the likes. Your view on Shyam Metallics, if you look at it on a trailing basis, the stock appears expensive. But they've got expansion plans, and that's why brokerages believe that EBITDA number will surge from around 1,500 crores, maybe to 4,000 crores odd. How would you view the stock?
Good morning, Nigel. So absolutely, you said it. There is more future than the past in this case. However, my concern is with everybody, especially the way the cycle is taken off, and we've spoken about how Tata Steel at 105 looks so attractive, and all the way moving to 130 plus, JSW, all of them. It's going to be now the turn of some of the secondary players, the smaller size players, the specialty steel players. A lot of that will start kind of getting into play. But in that space, if you really ask me, I would still chase value for the simple reason that Shyam Metallics trailing PE tells you that it is expensive, and if there's some risk, issues with execution, it starts kind of getting very vulnerable. So the risk reward is, to my understanding, not very favorable. And remember, whenever promoters are exiting, between them and somebody buying, it's anybody's guess on who's smarter. It's very simple. They know their business well. And if they were to be, looking at an OFS, there must be some reason why they need that liquidity at this point in time with these valuations. In that space, Nigel, very clearly, we've tracked Godavari and all of these. One name that stands out is Sunflag. I mean, I think, we've discussed this in the past. You've covered it so well. Ever since, there's been some resolution on that family dispute, it has been in a little bit of a momentum of sorts, but it still isn't where it should be in terms of the kind of cash it sits on, the holding that it has in some of the other companies like Lloyds, and also there's much more available in that space, in that size. I would not be very excited about putting money into this OFS at this point.
Okay, you won't be excited. Got it. The other pocket that I wanted your thoughts on, Prakash, and hi, good morning. Thanks for joining in, is banks, right? In the last 2-3 days, banks have started to come back in a big way. And you have this whole rejig that's happening on the 15th as well, where that post the HDFC Bank, HDFC merger, there'll be perhaps some more allocation towards HDFC Bank. Your thoughts on how to approach banks now? What would you buy, if at all?
So, good morning, Sonia. So that's an interesting space, and what's kind of making it even more interesting as a special opportunities, stages, HDFC Limited and HDFC Bank coming together, seeing this whole expansion of the balance sheet, makes HDFC Bank extremely hungry for PSL, priority sector loans, right? And when that happens, which they don't have, because HDFC Limited comes with a huge balance sheet, but really didn't have any of those in that significant distinct. So the bank will have to kind of shore up that component. And that means a lot of the smaller banks will see a lot of loans changing hands. A lot of the loan book will change hands. And that is going to be extremely positive for some of these smaller banks to kind of get into a very clear churn where they could kind of, start doing revenues, which is far better, top line growth, which is far better. Of course, margins might not accrue as well as organic growth would. But my sense is I would focus on the smaller banks. The smallest bank out of the lot, and which we speak about a lot in terms of a turnaround, is Bank of Maharashtra. Undoubtedly, I think it's turned around so decisively in the last quarter. All the metrics have improved so much. And this overhang where the government put in money and, the equity kind of got diluted too heavily, is kind of behind itself now. So, if you had to cherry pick some of these smaller banks, and of course, Federal will, it's not small, but Federal will continue to grow because of the kind of focus it has. But my sense is, if you had to look at some of the smaller banks, be a bit selective. Don't go for too many of them. I would believe Bank of Maharashtra probably makes that grade. It has risen, of course, from the late 20s to almost 40. But there still is, in the long term, there still is some value, which you'll start discovering from here on.
Oh.
Okay. By the way, Prakash, any Anything out of the G20 over the weekend which caught your eye from a market point of view? Some are talking about this, Middle East rail corridor.
Yes.
Which perhaps opens up opportunities. In what way? Because it's such a large project. If it starts to come together, it could be big. But it gives people ideas, especially with what's been happening in that space. On Friday, also IRFC, RVNL, RITES, all these were going up sharply. Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely, Prashant. Even in the morning when Surbhi was, she made a very nice statement. She said, we don't have details in terms of how this is going to pan out, but it's going to be positive for these stocks. So that's the sentiment. There is something which will accrue to most of these players, and it's a huge ecosystem that gets impacted favorably, right? We're not only talking about the sheer magnitude of what has been spoken about, but the complexity and the kind of ability of Indian companies to participate at every point in that value chain. So, the railway stocks have had this run because when they were floated through IPOs, there was a phase where the government just wanted to go ahead with their divestment targets. It was never to realize significant value, and nobody understood in that sense. Railways has always been around, work has always been around, but now what's happened is that the PSU railway stocks will lead the charge, and the likes of IRCON and RITES and all of them will start doing it. They've already been doing it. I know for sure that IRCON is actually building capabilities to be a global player, at least in the Asian subcontinent with, smaller countries in and around India. So that itself is going to be a big change. And I think they've geared themselves up. It might take time. Of course, it's not something, it's a blueprint that will start rolling out. But what it tells you is that there is visibility. So, I would look at this as a second lease of life to railway stocks. Look at them positive.
Okay, Prakash, thanks a lot for joining in.